Farmer Peters landed at the bottom of the tunnel with a loud thud. His first thought was one of gratitude at the layers of fat on his buttocks that had cushioned his landing, so much so that he gave a little chuckle. This was, however, shortly followed by regret that he had not worn some form of head protection when the free-falling Spud bounced off of his bonce. Lani, of course, landed on all fours, as cats always do. Ouch! Farmer Peters rubbed the rapidly developing bump on his forehead before checking that his friends were not hurt. Spud was also rubbing his various aches and bruises.
That was lucky you were there to break my fall, Master. Otherwise I would have become instant mash.
Lani purred, quite proud of herself at not sustaining any injury at all. However, her attention soon returned to the sounds of distraught cries that were echoing around the tunnels that lay ahead of them. I had hoped we would not be faced by danger right away, she sighed. Farmer Peters got himself up and positioned Spud on his shoulder like a pirate would his parrot. Yes, I would have liked to have met the locals first myself, and maybe had a cup of tea. If of course they drink that sort of thing down here.
No!
Spud shouted.
You must not drink anything. Remember, the chemicals have soaked into the soil and the water. A single sip could have devastating consequences for a human. Just imagine if you were to swell up and expand. You would cause the tunnels to collapse.
The three friends looked around them. They were at the centre of what appeared to be 3 tunnels. One to the north, one to the southwest, and one pointing east, but each of which disappeared into the darkness. A torch, Farmer Peters muttered. I should have packed a torch. Never mind, Lani answered. I can lead the way. My eyes are used to the dark. Spud thought for a moment, and then murmured,
Satwad.
The others looked at him, quizzically.
My friends had whispered to me to head southwest. It's the way to the main town.
Lani sighed. It's also the direction that the screams are coming from. Well then, Farmer Peters declared, that is the way that we should go. We expected danger, so we may as well head towards it. He tapped his walking stick into the surface below his feet, as a marker just in case they got lost, and began to follow Lani, who, reluctantly but determinedly, had started to make her way into the pitch-black tunnel. Spud began to whistle, and then recite a tune softly into his master's ear. It went something like this.
Nut-tut-tut-tut, no tunnel too dark. Nut-put-tut, no passage too long. A whistle, a hum, the journey's begun to do right in a land that's gone wrong. Upward a scrud, a panic, a scream, an upward grud, an underworld grave. But though you may fear, a hero grows near. There is one from the soil that will save.
That's very nice, Spud, Farmer Peters said. He tried to join in, but could not get his tongue around the udludderbuds of the potato language. Did you write that?
Oh no, most definitely not,
Spud replied.
It would be a bit big-headed, as it's about me.
About you? Farmer Peters gasped. Are you the hero from the soil in the words?
Well, apparently,
Spud chirped back, with a hint of embarrassment in his voice.
According to the prophecies. I don't feel much of a hero, though.
Who on earth came up with such a tale, then? Lani inquired.
It was the wise one,
Spud answered.
Borgor the bookworm, the one that we're seeking.
He continued humming to himself as the 3 of them continued on their way, mainly to distract attention from the screams that could still be heard from afar. They walked for what seemed like hours in the dark, but in fairly good spirits, mainly due to the occasional stop to feast on treats that Farmer Peters had packed inside his rucksack. Spud then perked up.
Look ahead! There are lights! Many lights!
He was quite right. They were faint at first, but soon could be seen clearly glimmering in the distance. Slowly but surely, the walls of the tunnel began to widen out, and the adventurers found themselves entering what looked like a busy chamber, with mud houses at each side that had long stick-like posts protruding from the roofs from which hung bright lights. The screams had ceased, and an eerie silence fell upon the three of them. "Hello! Is there anyone there?" Farmer Peters called out. With that, there was a sound of loud banging as the shutters from each of the houses were slammed down in unison.
"Have no fear, my friends,"
Spud added, before bellowing out in a loud voice,
"Nut tut tut tut."
Almost immediately, voices could be heard from inside each of the dwellings, chanting, "Nut tut tut tut, nut put tut tut." With that, the windows began to open, quickly followed by the doors, and out of each house came the potato people. None the size of Spud, but all much larger than the largest jack potato you or I would have ever seen.
"Is it true,"
one of them spoke out,
"that the messengers have been successful?"
"Our prayers have been answered,"
another added.
"and look, one of the man folk has come too."
Lani was somewhat put out by the fact that no one had seemed to notice her, quietly whispering a slightly sarcastic, "Oh, and they bought their cat." Spud spoke up in a rather commanding voice.
"My people, may I introduce to you Farmer Peters, he who gave you life, and my friend Lani, she who inadvertently kept me from the doom that has befallen you all."
"It's lucky she did,"
came the voice of a somewhat lanky potato.
"You may have been taken by the Red Ant armies, like so many of us have already."
He gulped before continuing,
"From the screams and cries that we've heard, we fear that they are being tortured."
A chubby potato continued where the lanky one had left off.
"Some say they've been peeled."
Tears flooded from his eyes as he told the story.
"Yes, peeled, and peeled until they scream no more."
The lanky one, a little bit annoyed that Chubby had interrupted his story, began to talk over him.
"Nearly a whole crop they've taken and destroyed."
"But why?"
said Spud.
"I thought they only had eyes for sweets."
"Oh, not for eating,"
Chubby sobbed.
"The Red Ants have got themselves a Spud gun, which they stole from that world above. I hate to say it, but they're using the flesh of the potato people to arm this mighty cannon that they're hoping to use on their bitter foes, the Black Ants."
Spud's face turned a bright red, clearly angered by what he was hearing, so much so that he was left speechless.
"Then you must take us to Borgor the Bookworm immediately," said Farmer Peters. "We were told he could help."
At the very mention of that name, the potato people again fell into silence. The chubby one then spoke up, his voice quivering with fear.
"Borgor would not be pleased. He said if we bothered him again, he would peel us even quicker than the ants do."
"I thought Borgor was meant to be wise and friendly," said Lani. "This worm sounds like a despicable character to me." The lanky potato, again angered by Chubby's interruptions, added,
"Oh, he does not mean it really. He's just sad and lonely since the other worms went away." "Well, whatever he's like, we must see him," Farmer Peters said bravely. "You need not come if you're scared. Just point us in the right direction."
With that, both Lanky and Chubby pointed into the distance, and some way ahead, once the walls of mud houses had ceased, a tall building could be seen sat against the side of the tunnels. I say a building, but it was actually the largest red apple you could ever imagine, with a makeshift door covering what looked like a large bite mark. Spud, now returning to his normal colour, let out a mighty roar, jumped from Farmer Peter's shoulder, and raced as fast as his legs could take him towards the large apple, shouting out,
"Come, friends! From the soil I came to save you all, like the prophecy said."
The potato people cheered triumphantly. Meanwhile, Farmer Peters and Lani looked at each other with humoured smiles on their faces before racing after Spud whilst he remained just about in view. As the cheers faded into the distance, Farmer Peters looked nervously at the large apple house that lay ahead of them. It was some 10 times larger than he was, and flying from the stalk at the top of the fruit there was a huge flag with the words "Go away" written in big red letters.
I think I better knock,
said Spud as he approached the door, and politely hammered 3 times with his fist. Before the third knock had finished ringing out, a voice spurted out from inside the apple.
Can't you read? It says, "Go away."
Spud looked at Farmer Peters, who looked at Lani. Okay, the cat sighed. I'll deal with this. She knocked again. We need to talk to you, you big misery. With that, there was a loud squelching sound, and out of the flesh of the apple poked the head of an angry-looking worm.
Well, I'm not wanting to talk,
Borgor screamed, for indeed it was he.
Go away!
Lani lifted a paw, ready to pluck Borgor from the hole he had created, when there was the sound of a loud horn blowing from afar, an ear-shattering horn accompanied by the noise of marching. Almost immediately, the lights from the nearby potato village flickered and went out. Spud looked up and kicked the ground in frustration.
Oh no, we're too late,
he shouted.
The red ants! The red ants are attacking!